No one knew how much time had passed before divers discovered a coffin at the bottom of the sea. Dracula punched his way out of the coffin and swam to the surface, finally stepping onto British soil, but time had passed. The world had changed. Above him came a loud, unfamiliar roar, and a blinding light engulfed him. The Van Helsing Foundation had him surrounded with heavy weaponry. The leader bore a striking resemblance to his old Nemesis. Dracula stared in disbelief at the familiar face and softly uttered, "Agatha." The woman, however, was unmoved. Dracula quickly realized that she wasn't Agatha. Humans operating massive steel machines made Dracula uneasy. He was curious. How long had he been asleep? The woman, Zoe, was Agatha's great-great-granddaughter. She had inherited her ancestors' mission and had dedicated her life to studying vampires. A woman woke up to find a strange man in her home. Dracula, having just fed, didn't attack her right away. Only then did she realize that it was her husband who had let him in. No matter how much she called out, her husband didn't respond from the living room. When she finally got out of bed, she discovered that the refrigerator had been tied shut with rope, one of Dracula's quirks, locking away the drained bodies of his victims. Dracula was able to witness the beauty of a sunset on TV for the first time, while the woman cowered in the corner, terrified. To Dracula, this messy and cramped house was 1,000 times better than his vast castle. The rapid advancements of the modern world were far beyond Dracula's imagination. Looking at his true reflection in the mirror, he smashed it with a punch. Just then, a sound came from upstairs. The woman took advantage of Dracula's momentary distraction and fled. Upstairs, in the hallway, Dracula found an iron coffin and a cell phone. When he answered the call, Zoe ordered him to surrender and lie inside the coffin. Dracula, confident in his hiding spot, remained unafraid of sunlight. And Dracula recoiled, terrified, into a corner. He neither agreed nor refused Zoe's demands. Instead, he insisted on meeting her in person. Zoe, just like her ancestor Agatha, fearlessly entered the house alone. She discovered the male homeowner, folded and stuffed inside the refrigerator. However, Dracula didn't anticipate that Zoe's blood was toxic. Not only did he vomit it all out, but he also felt incredibly weak. When he woke up again, he found himself locked inside an iron coffin. Through the gaps, he saw that the founder of the Van Helsing Foundation was none other than Mina, Harker's fiancée. It turned out that after Dracula had let Mina go, she sought out Agatha's descendants, and together they established this organization solely to eliminate Dracula. The prison designed to hold Dracula was quite ingenious, utilizing sunlight to compress his living space. Out of humanitarian concern, Zoe even provided him with a tablet for entertainment. Humans no longer feared vampires. Besides studying blood samples, Dracula was considered a unique specimen and a living history book. Dracula finally understood why Zoe's blood was toxic to him. She was suffering from cancer, and it was in the advanced stages. Just then, a lawyer arrived, requesting the release of his client. After learning to use the internet, Dracula's first task was to find himself a lawyer. Once he moved out of the legal system, Zoe could only release Dracula after sunset, rendering her lifelong efforts in vain. Before leaving, Dracula stealthily pocketed an intern's phone, which allowed him to connect with the intern's secret crush, the socialite Lucy. Zoe's deteriorating health was no longer sufficient to continue resisting Dracula. Reflecting on Dracula's last words, that blood is life, and everyone he had consumed flowed through his veins, Zoe decided to drink Dracula's blood. Immediately, she dreamed of her ancestor Agatha's experiences as if she were living them herself. Dracula and Lucy had been together for 3 months, and the scar on Lucy's neck never healed. What attracted Dracula most to her was her fearless attitude toward life and death. The two often met in graveyards, listening to the dead struggle beneath the ground. Eventually, Dracula decided to make Lucy his bride. The transformation process was no different from death. Lucy's body grew cold while her soul screamed in the mirror, unseen by any living person. However, Dracula had miscalculated. In modern society, cremation was the norm. Lucy's body was ultimately sent to the furnace. Though her body couldn't move, her consciousness was fully awake. No matter how much she screamed, No sound came out. After Lucy's corpse was sent into the furnace, she happened to complete her transformation and woke up. She was refined by the flames for several hours. It wasn't until nightfall that Lucy broke open the cremation furnace. The noise attracted the attention of a security guard. After Lucy drained the guard's blood, she caught a glimpse of her stunning reflection in the mirror. Meanwhile, Dracula was in his mansion, preparing fine wine, eagerly awaiting Lucy's return. He didn't expect that the first visitor would be Van Helsing. Zoe, the intern Zoe brought along, was treated by Dracula as another fine vintage. After drinking Dracula's blood, Zoe encountered her ancestor, Agatha, in the realm of consciousness. Just as Dracula had said, every person he consumed lived on in his blood. Inspired by Agatha, Zoe finally understood why Dracula feared sunlight, crosses, and more. The two women united in purpose to expose the lies that had persisted for centuries. Not long after, the doorbell rang again. Dracula, filled with confidence, assumed it must be Lucy. The table reflected Lucy's stunning beauty. She had once been the goddess of desire for the intern, Jack. Yet now, Jack avoided her entirely, not daring to look her in the eye. Zoe handed her a cell phone. Lucy raised it, pressed the shutter, and finally saw her true appearance. No matter how much Dracula comforted her, Lucy couldn't accept it. She feared not death, but losing her beauty. In a bid to liberate his goddess, Jack leaned in for a kiss. Lucy had long recognized the wooden stake hidden behind him. As Lucy turned to ashes, Dracula was greatly displeased. Zoe remarked that the little interlude was over, and it was time to get down to business. She ordered Jack to leave, as Dracula would never allow a living person to witness what was to come. Under Dracula's shocked gaze, Zoe climbed onto the dining table and leaped, tearing down the curtains. By then, it was bright outside, and the scorching sunlight poured over Dracula. He writhed in agony on the ground, but suddenly he realized that his skin was not burning. Dracula's worldview shattered. The so-called vampire curse was nothing more than habits transformed into rumors, strict confines that paranoid Dracula had imposed on himself. Through the tales told by the world, he had come to believe in the curse as well. His fear of the curse was, at its core, a fear of death. His ancestors had all been warriors who died in battle, and as the only coward in the family, he hid in the shadows, stealing the lives of others. Zoe quietly awaited death, something Dracula could never do. He carefully experienced the sunlight, feeling a warmth he had never known. 500 years had passed like a fleeting moment, and he had never truly lived. Thanks to Agatha and Zoe, he awakened from his self-deception. Watching Zoe's eyes gradually fade, he resolved to sacrifice his remaining endless years to perform an act of kindness, to fulfill a conquest. In the blood-soaked world, Zoe and Dracula intertwined.